Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Holistic Academy and our podcast where we explore the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science for better living. I'm your host, Amy, and I'm here with David. I want to start with an exciting question. Are you tired tonight, today, whilst listening to the podcast? Not just I miss some sleep tired, but that deep chronic, I'm super tired. Why can't I focus? My head hurts.
Mm.
Some of you might be thinking, but I'm still eating well. I'm eating my vegetables. I'm getting some form of exercise. I do walk around my work office. But you might still think that your energy and productivity still aren't there and you're wondering why. What if the answer isn't just what you're doing, but when you're doing it?
Mm.
So today we're going to go on an exciting journey, a story that starts in antiquity and ends with a Nobel Prize. And this is a way to understand our body's master blueprint. Our episode today is From Stress to Flow, Thriving with Earth's Powerful Rhythms. So we're talking about circadian rhythms, our 16 to 8 fasting routine in hours, and seasonal energies. And to guide us, I'm really thrilled again to be joined each week by holistic scientist and author Dr. David Ortega. David, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Amy. It's always a pleasure to record these episodes of ancient wisdom and these holistic teachings that we have. And I think it's right on point, this topic, because we are going to enter into a lower frequency of energy. And I think that people are feeling it already as we transition into colder in the northern hemisphere. Let's say we are transitioning into this winter season and getting colder everywhere in this northern hemisphere, and we can feel this exhaustion that you describe, where we hear that every day people are starting to feel like they need to be dragged out of their beds so that they can start the day and have a big cup of coffee so that they can activate and do all sorts of things and consume all sorts of supplements and things that they are trying to inject in their bodies so that they can have this energy. And probably it's not that difficult, all the things and the steps that we have to do, but understand that as we are beings of nature, we have to learn how to follow our rhythms. And maybe sometimes we are betraying our bodies. But the truth is that we are living in a 24/7 world with a biological system that evolved for these rhythms, the rhythm of the sun, the rhythm of the seasons, and the rhythm of feast and famine. That's why also this, let's say, system of fasting works for many people, because we need to, let's say, to start managing our energy as hybrid systems, not as just feeding a schedule all over the place because we are demanding too much energy, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our energy levels are super crucial. And yeah, sometimes we feel like our bodies are abandoning us and not giving us enough energy. But the reality is, we're not actually supporting our body in the way it needs. So we're abandoning our bodies in that way. So to fix it, David, where can our story begin?
Well, I think it begins with the oldest health interventions that we have, which are fasting. And we did an episode, a very complete episode of the history of fasting. So we have to understand how it works and why our bodies sometimes need these kind of uh, interactions with not having any kind of food at all, and just water, so that we can rest our digestive system, our enzymes, all the messages that we release when we eat something, and have that energy to repair our system and to also have more cognitive skills. So we also need to understand how seasonal eating is, and we are going to talk about that. So these aren't modern fads, they are not just trending, uh, let's say, influencer capsules that we just do and talk about. They are ancient practices embedded in human culture for millennia.
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting. You just talk a lot about fasting as a way to regulate our energy levels so we can start there. And you're right, we spoke lots about it on episode 6. So that's a really exciting episode where I heard that Pythagoras made his students fast for 40 days before they could go into his school. But when I hear about intermittent fasting, I still feel about that trend, still think about that trendy modern life hack for weight loss. So what sort of things are you talking about when we are discussing fasting and our energy levels?
Well, now we have a lot of evidence that this kind of system is one of the most, let's say, flexible, so that we can incorporate that into our lives. And also, we know that it has a therapeutic use of fasting, talking about these ancient cultures, and how you spoke about these ancient wise guys that ask their students to fast for 40 days, like Aristotle, and how he asked his students to have their mind clean, let's say, and more in this frequency of ketone bodies that we are going to talk about how they are produced and what are they. And so we can go back to the 5th century BCE, where the Greek physician Hippocrates, the father of medicine, wouldn't just prescribe drugs, he would prescribe fasting. And he famously said, to eat when you are sick is to feed your illness. And I couldn't agree more with this quote, because, I mean, when we are feeling sick, I think that if we have some time to perceive our bodies, we feel that we don't have the energy to eat. And when we do it, when we force ourselves into eating something, because also some um, grandmothers and grandfathers used to say, you have to eat because you need energy for your body to repair. Well, that is just common sense, let's say, but it's not scientifically true. We need to let our bodies rest from digestion and use that energy in the immune system. So if we leave our immune system to work instead of taking away energy from it, we will heal faster. So he understood that abstinence from food gives the body a chance to rest and heal.
Mm. That's interesting because we don't always feel like we want to eat when we're sick. But I remember my mum still trying to make me nice toast, bread and butter, small little plain things to move down me. But maybe it's my body actually saying, no, don't feed me. I'm resting and repairing. But it's not just about medicine that we see the powerful benefits of fasting. Looking more at spiritual traditions, a lot of them have periods of fasting and certain celebrations and ceremonies and initiations that involve a lot of fasting. Judaism has Yom Kippur, a day of complete atonement and fasting. Christianity has the 40-day fast of Lent, and Islam has the month-long dawn to dusk fast, which is the Ramadan. Even in Buddhism, in fact, monks are often advised not to eat after noon to aid in clarity and meditation. So I agree, these cultures have already clearly recognized intuitively that cycling our food intake does something more profound, not just to the body, but the mind. And in these religions and traditions, they can see that by having a period of fasting, you can actually experience profound insights and wisdom. So, what about others we have mentioned? You mentioned some of the seasonal rhythms other than our daily rhythms, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So, what do you mean by these seasonal rhythms that we could align more to?
Yes. Well, I think that letting and traveling back to when we didn't have this global shipping and just one click and you have your food in your home in, I don't know, half an hour or 1 hour maximum, and we didn't have refrigeration. All eating was seasonal eating. So our Paleolithic ancestors ate what they could hunt or gather, and that was according to the season. That changed dramatically with the kind of seasons that we had. And ancient cultures didn't just endure this, they built their entire philosophies around it. For example, look at the ancient traditional Chinese medicine and its philosophy of seasons and solar terms. They had specific foods for specific times of the year, eating spring pancakes to take a bite out of spring, or my favorite, plumping up in autumn by eating more meat to build fat stores for the winter. And even the ancient Mediterranean diet was, by its very nature, seasonal. The Greeks and the Romans built their triad on what the land gave them: olives in autumn, grapes in late summer, and wheat in early summer.
Yeah, it's interesting and easy to relate that our diet should be more seasonal, but definitely, as you said, in my supermarket, I'm able to get strawberries pretty much all time of the year and different types of fruits where they can import them and move them around. But I definitely think for most of history, winter would have been that cold period where not much produce would have grown or thrived, and it probably meant a time of scarcity. The freezing cold is not as well very good for any farming conditions. So yeah, how did people survive without all year round supermarkets? It's probably very different from how we live today.
Yes, it is completely different. And I think that it was human ingenuity. And this is where we see the birth of food preservation.
Yeah, preservation. It is so interesting. I only know sort of what's preserved in the supermarket and their sell by date, but I'm sure after my research, I've noticed that our grandmas and ancestors and beyond had these ideas of how you could actually save and preserve a lot of these different summer fruits and summer harvests for the winter period. So handling food in different weather was fundamental for those times. As we all know now, that food not handled well goes off and it's probably quite smelly and doesn't taste very good.
Mhm.
Um, so the techniques of having more seasonal farming would have been a testament to our ancestors' wisdom. They, as you said, dried fruits and meats and ate them at different times of the year, and the best time would be doing that in the summer, coming to autumn, where it's much sunnier. Another thing that they would like to do is salt and cure fish and pork to keep it lasting longer. And the most important sort of process and method that they were using was fermentation. So this is using beneficial microbes to preserve food and make it more nutritious, giving things like sauerkraut, kimchi, and yogurt, which, although seems a bit weird to be eating live cultures of microbes. Those things are very yummy. And of course, as well, the root cellars, which kept root vegetables cool and viable through the cold months. This was the way, our ancestors' way of life, where they managed their own energy and their food on an annual scale. And it's super amazing. I really just can't believe that they would have had different meals all time of the year. There's only a few different seasonal meals I know about, so it would have been, every 4 months almost changing. But they've been practicing these incredibly sophisticated techniques for alignment and for aligning their energies with the seasons without even knowing the science. So, could you remind us, David, is there any science out there that talks about how moving from dysregulated and stressful, out of alignment, kind of living towards aligning with Earth's natural rhythms? What sort of science is out there? When did we figure things out in science? And is there a seasonal or biological clock inside all of us?
Well, this is just a very, very dear topic for me because I think that we all can be regulated with these internal clocks. And for that, we have to jump forward to 1729. The first character in our scientific story is a French astronomer named Jean-Jacques d'Otto de Marianne, let's say. And he was fascinated by a mimosa plant, which opened its leaves in the day and closed them at night. And everyone assumed it was just reacting to the sun. But he had a revolutionary idea. What if it wasn't?
What did he do?
Well, he conducted a simple but brilliant experiment. He put the plant in a dark cupboard away from all light cues and he watched. Lo and behold, the plant still opened and closed its leaves on that same 24-hour cycle. So this was the first ever proof that the rhythm wasn't just a passive response. It was being driven by an internal or endogenous clock.
Oh, yeah, that guy. So he probably discovered the circadian rhythm. That's
Mm.
our own body's internal 24-hour cycle, bit like these mimosa plants. And our cycle regulates our physical, mental, and behavioral changes like sleep and wakefulness. I think we normally call it maybe our body clock. And actually, I can vouch for this that it's definitely influenced by light or darkness because we'll probably talk more about this. But when I wake up in the winter with the daylight saving hours, that light change and new rhythm really impacts my sleep, my body temperature, and my hormones. So you don't want to be around me if I haven't had the best sleep, especially in the winter when it's my seasonal clock is being shifted out of balance.
Yeah, indeed. And there is a lot of repercussions in these light changes, I think. And many people all over the world where they change their clocks, they feel these changes in energy and they sometimes need 1 month to adapt to them. And that's, of course, part of what we feel in this draining energy that we are experiencing sometimes. So, Jean Jacques discovered the phenomenon of the circadian rhythm, but it took another 200 years for the field to catch up. In the 1930s, a German biologist named Erwin Boning did meticulous experiments with bean plants and confirmed the Marianne's findings, showing the trait was inheritable. But the field didn't even have a name until 1959 when scientist Franz Halber finally coined the term circadian.
So they already discovered it without calling it that term. That's pretty cool. In fact, the word circadian is from Latin circa diem, which means about the day. So that kind of makes sense. But because, as Bunning found, the internal clock doesn't run at exactly 24 hours, it's close. But he said it needed a daily signal to reset our clock. And that signal is the sun.
Exactly. And it's very, very interesting about what happens with the sun and how we have to also, let's say, promote that people take this sunlight. But the biggest question remain how. So how does a plant or an animal or a human actually keep time? It's one thing to say a clock exists, but it's another to find its gears.
Yeah, well, I've been doing a lot of dog sitting, and I can tell you the dogs, they just know the time. They know the time when to wake up. They know the time when it's their dinner. They even know the time when it's their doggy treat for nighttime, their dental stick. So it's pretty amazing that animals and organisms have their own internal clock. But yes, David, I want to know how. How does it work? What's inside of their brains that makes them know that this is the time? Because I don't think plants or animals, as far as I know, can read a clock. So is this where the story can get a bit more molecular?
Yeah, it does exactly. And the next chapter is written by the heroes of modern chronobiology, and it starts in 1971. So we are getting closer to our modern times with two scientists, Seymour Benzer and Ronald Konopka, and they were working with fruit flies, Drosophila, and they used mutagens to see if they could break the fly's internal clock.
Oh, so they were trying to break the clock inside and disrupt that gene that encodes their body clock. So
Mhm.
how would they know in their experiments if a fruit fly has a broken clock?
They change the time like the modern times. So you look at it when it hatches, and normally they hatch at dawn. But Benzer and Konopka found mutants that were completely arrhythmic and hatching at all hours. So they found others with a fast 19-hour clock and some with a slow 28-hour clock. So they trace all these mutations down to a single location on the X chromosome, and they name this first ever clock gene the period. And this was the watershed moment because the clock wasn't some mystical force, it was genetic.
So it's down to a gene. Maybe I'd prefer if there's a way to disrupt those genes so I could have a longer sleep when I'm pet sitting. But yeah, that's quite cool that it's genetic. So that makes sense that our biological clock is all based on a gene, and I guess that gene creates certain proteins that help regulate our rhythm, which we'll probably come on to now as that sort of leads to the 2017 Nobel Prize, which was awarded to three American scientists, Jeffrey C. Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael W. Young. And in 1984, they definitely had the lab equipment and the desire to sequence and isolate that very gene called the period gene. And over the next decade, they unraveled the whole beautiful mechanism, and they discovered how that gene creates that protein. Which is called. They discovered a protein called PER, which I guess is just half of the word period. I love how scientists name things. Sometimes it's easy. Yay! So the period gene makes the protein PER, And that is the protein that builds up in our cells overnight. And when it reaches a high enough concentration, it moves to the cell's nucleus and blocks its own gene from making any more of it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's perfect. And there is a transcriptional and then translational feedback loop. So when we have these different layers in our genes, we have this hardware, let's say we have instructions, and then we have a software, and then we create these proteins so that people can relate to this kind of concepts. And Michael W. Young, in his lab, he found the partner genes, which are timeless, and the abbreviation for this gene is TIM, and double time, which is DBT. And that act as the regulatory gears, ensuring this entire loop takes almost exactly 24 hours to complete. So that little feedback loop, that's our clock.
Yeah, exactly. So those different genes, period, timeless, and double time, they're the core oscillators, the tick-tock at the heart of our cells.
Yeah. And in us, in humans, this mechanism runs in a master pacemaker in the brain, which is a tiny cluster of 20,000 neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, and it sits right above our optic nerve, where it can get all the important light signal from our eyes every morning to reset itself. And the SCN is the master conductor. And this is one of the most important things I think in this episode, because this means that you need to take sunlight in the morning. If you live in a building and then you go down to your, let's say, to your parking lot, and then you start doing driving to your office, and then you get inside your office, and then you go out when there is no sun, you are not having sunlight. You are just avoiding this reset mechanism, and this is what is disrupting your system. If you repeat this cycle for months or even years, this is what is draining your energy, because you are not giving the signals to your body and to your clocks so that you can have a restful sleep.
Hmm. Well, I half agree with you, David, with that because I agree that the sunlight is very important, but I still see the sunlight out my window every day and
Mhm.
I still sometimes feel tired. So if we have this beautiful Nobel Prize-winning clock that's meant to reset itself every day with sunlight, why might we all still be so tired and unfocused?
Hmm. Well, this is where it gets more interesting, because it's not just the clock. So, because of a concept called chrono disruption, here is the problem. This SEN in your brain, or this master clock, let's call it like that so that we can have a better understanding. And this sets its time by light. But in the last 20 years, we have discovered that you don't have one clock. You have peripheral clocks in nearly every organ, in your liver, in your pancreas, in your gut, in your muscles. And what do those clocks listen to? What's the main, what's their main time giver?
Hmm, good question. So you talked about your liver, your pancreas, your gut, and your muscles. Something about giving them time and energy. I guess it's our food.
Exactly. It's our food. And now you see the problem. We live in a world where you can get bright blue light from a screen at 11 p.m., telling your master clock that it is still daytime. So you are tricking your body into believing that it's already morning, but simultaneously you also are creating these triggering signals, and you are eating a bowl of ice cream or some cookies or any kind of snack that you consume at night, telling your liver it's time to wake up and metabolize sugar. And your brain is trying to go to sleep, but your liver clock it is just starting its day shift. So you are creating a complete disruption in your system, and the conductor or the master clock is telling the orchestra to play a lullaby, but the percussion section just got a signal to play a marching band fanfare. So the result is metabolic chaos. It's just like watching a short in TikTok and getting your mind prime and just having just noise in your system sometimes. No?
Yeah, definitely. If I go to sleep at night too late, or I'm definitely one for late night snacking if I'm hungry, then sometimes it's even harder to go to sleep. So, yeah, I'm disrupting my rhythm, I'm blocking it. So, that's not great. And I liked your metaphor about, yeah, different nice, calming musical sounds, but one of them just not going off because of all these other organs and all these other secondary clocks that we have in our system. So when it's not working, what can that also look like inside the body when it's all in chaos and it's all not synchronized into these natural rhythms?
What it looks like impaired glucose metabolism, and we also have increased fat accumulation just by triggering these signals. So pay attention on this. And you also have a rampant of insulin resistance. So your body is least sensitive to insulin at night. So that late night meal or snack causes a much higher and more damaging spike in blood sugar than the exact same meal eaten in the morning. So this misalignment is a primary driver of the epidemics of obesity and type 2 diabetes. And this entire field is what we now call chrononutrition.
Oh, chrononutrition. So I was just looking that up, David. What a fancy word. The study of how the timing of food intake is in relation to your body's internal circadian clock. And that can really impact our health. So I guess that's where we began with the fasting, the 16-hour fast and 8-hour eating window. That sort of 16-8 protocol can come in here, where it's not just about fasting, but it's about the timing, making sure that you're fasting for 16 hours, sleep for 8, and it's all in a consistent, regular rhythm every day. You're not changing that 8-hour window, making it one day starting at 7 in the morning and the next day starting at 2 in the afternoon. It's about having this rhythm, isn't that right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, our bodies are and they work in a very synchronistic way, as this example was saying. It's an orchestra, and the more structured we are in terms of following the same time that you go to sleep, the same time you eat, the more your body will get used to, and your clocks will synchronize and work perfectly. And all of the metabolic cascade of signals are going to start releasing the, the messaging systems in place. So you won't have a chaotic, let's say, uh, rock song, but you will have a symphony. No, it is the single most powerful tool that we have to fix this disconnect. So this 16-8 protocol, or time restricted eating, that is also called TRE, forces realignment to the flow. And by consolidating all your foods into a consistent 8-hour window, you create a long 16-hour daily fast. And this does two things. First, fasting, well, it creates a very clear eating and fasting signal for your peripheral clocks. So, for all the clocks that you have inside of your organs, allowing them to finally resynchronize with your brain's master clock.
So that's where it gives you more energy and focus.
Mhm, exactly. So, this is just part one. Part two is the magic that happens during the 16-hour fast. After about 12 to 14 hours, your body runs out of stored glucose, which is the glycogen. That's the name of this stored glucose. And it has to find another fuel source. So it initiates the metabolic switch and it begins to break down your stored body fat in a process that generates ketones or ketone bodies. And this is the most powerful fuel for your brain, for your cognitive skills, and for a much healthier way to have this concentration and memory attention spans. And it turns out that your brain loves ketones. It's a cleaner, more efficient fuel than glucose. And this is the mental clarity, the fog lifting, let's say, effect that people report. But it gets better. This fasted state is a mild beneficial stress that triggers a cellular housekeeping program called autophagy. And this is where cells clean out all damaged components.
Yeah, wow. It's quite interesting to see that happen when you have the metabolic switch to ketones. I had heard as well that ketone is really good for people maybe with aging diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia because it helps with that mental clarity and at times it can almost manage the symptoms of those it can manage the symptoms to more effect on this ketone diet. However, a ketone diet consists of high fat foods like avocados, oils, nuts, and fatty meats, which I could be okay with, although I'm a vegetarian. But it strictly limits carbohydrates from grains, sugars, fruits, and starchy vegetables. So you also, yeah, should avoid sugars. So I don't think that's going to sit well in my diet. I know
Mm.
that's why probably a lot of people struggle to do the ketone diet and trigger that process of ketosis and autophagy and clearing the mental fog because it is quite strict in how it works. But what we eat is so important and it really affects our mind and the way we see things. So if we want to move more away from stress into flow, we need to align with these natural rhythms, these food cycles, these fasting diets that can help us achieve better health and I guess better overall success in our life. And so, yeah, what about then a bit more about the focus and productivity in our minds? Is there any other parts to our brains that can help achieve bigger focus?
Yes, and I think this is my favorite part. And that metabolic switch and the resulting ketones have been shown to increase the production of a protein called brain derived neurotrophic factor or BDNF, which I call the BDNF miracle grow for the brain, and it supports the survival of your existing neurons and encourages the growth of new ones. So, this is absolutely critical for learning, for memory, and for focus. So, when you fast, you are not just burning fat, you are literally building a better, more resilient, and more focused brain.
Wow. So it totally makes sense why those early philosophers believed in fasting too, because your brain was clearer and more refined and attuned and resilient. And just like I was saying, that's probably why it really helps with aging diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, because it's able to create these new growth neurons. So, what an amazing bit of research. And I definitely need to consider doing that fasting, intermittent fasting idea to help my brain be a bit more focused. And yeah, that would be, just as we've said it throughout this podcast, a really great way to realign with the natural rhythm of the earth and our daily cycles. And as our podcast is all about reducing stress and helping you step into flow, then this is just such a simple hack. It doesn't cost anything. In fact, it might even pay you because you might eat less overall. So, yeah, what a great hack. You don't need to go to the doctor for it. But I do think in this modern working life, it is quite hard to get into these new rhythms of eating or habits or patterns of life. We all suffer with bad habits, and I think a lot of us suffer with that absence of the natural biological clock. We all have to work 9 to 5. Sometimes we're racing to the evening and we've still got work to do, or we've got to pick up our kids and take care of someone. So many of us are still living in a constant state of stress and chronically living out of sync with our natural cycles. And, this is going to definitely impact our overall health, as we've highlighted. Many of us might suffer with like irregular sleep patterns. You mentioned, David, that artificial light at night. A lot of us are on our phones, on the TV. It's really not good for you. Also, even some light bulbs, there's different light bulbs you can buy, but some of those also interfere with that natural rhythm. We're also now in an era of life where we just want constant distractions, non-stop mental stimulation, always a device or something going on in the background. Maybe we've got multiple things going on. So that's also going to keep us stressed, and we're going to be really disconnected from our bodies. And often people like this have also not had much time in nature and natural environments. So I think it is really important that we do, if anyone's listening to this, work as hard as you can or do an experiment. I challenge you and invite you to do an experiment to see if you can do a bit of fasting, then perhaps we'll feel more aligned and have that energy. So if we're not doing the right things, we will not be meeting the needs of that circadian rhythm. And that can also affect our nervous system and our brainwave patterns as well. So we need to be careful, because when these systems desynchronize, our body does default to stress, tension, and cognitive noise.
Mhm.
So if we were going to fast or do some other practices that we are a bit more aware of the earth's natural rhythm, then some beneficial shifts might occur, like having our nervous system shifting from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. So we're feeling more relaxed, we have lower heart rate, deeper breathing. This reduces the stress hormone cortisol, so it will reduce any inflammation in our body, and it can help us relax our muscles. So that's one good reason to be more aligned as well with the natural rhythms. As I said, the brain waves, they can shift. So there's different types of wave patterns, and if you're in your daily highly focused, highly stimulated brain, you'll be in high beta waves. And by having more flow in your life, you can move towards alpha and theta states, which can support creativity, intuition, problem solving, emotional fluidity, and of course, the clarity that you've been talking about, David. So it is like an entire system that's all coherent, all working together, and having this structured practice with our natural rhythms, our flow, our the earth, the planet that we're on, eventually will create all that ease, clarity, connection, and flow that we were talking about. So this has been a really rich picture from stress to flow. We've already connected the ancient fasting traditions and some Nobel Prize, and the 16 to 80 hour fast protocol as a way to move out of stress and flow. But as well, we've been mentioning seasons, we're heading into winter. And as I've mentioned throughout the podcast, I and so many of our listeners will be feeling the energy drain, the winter blues. So is it all part of the same system?
Yeah, that's the last piece of the puzzle. And it is often called seasonal affective disorder or SAD. And it's a perfect example of chrono disruption, but on an annual scale.
Oh no, please don't say I have SAD, sad seasonal affective disorder. Maybe I do though. But what's the mechanism then for it?
Well, it's all about the light and the reduced sunlight in fall and in winter, and that means that your master clock or the SCN gets a weaker reset signal each morning. And this disruption can cause two major problems: a drop in serotonin, the neurotransmitter that regulates the mood, and dysregulation of melatonin, and the sleep hormone, which can leave you feeling lethargic and sleepy all day.
Well, that sounds like me, a drop in serotonin and a dysregulation in melatonin. Oh, what a shame. But yes, I can really see that our body is incredible. With its ancient programming, it can sense the short days coming and basically is telling me it's time to hibernate. So, in fact, it has shown that your body can even trigger an increase in insulin resistance to help you store fat, that plumping up for the winter that we you discussed in the ancient Chinese texts. So that's quite a cool mechanism that was helpful for our ancestors when food was scarce and the winter there wasn't much growing around. But anyway, that mechanism for now is disastrous with us all with a pantry full of food, a fridge full of food, a supermarket full of food. It's really, we've had to adapt and change, and our rhythms as a consequence have been severely disrupted.
Yeah, exactly. But we can fight back many of these, let's say, damaging habits. We can we can't change the sun, but we can supplement it.
Supplementing the sun. So, would you use more light?
Yes, with light, and this is called light therapy. And it's an incredible effective tool, but you can just use a lamp. You need a specific light therapy box that provides 10,000 lux of brightness. That's the clinical standard. And just like with food, timing is everything. You must use it for 20 or 30 minutes, but it has to be within the first hour of waking up.
Why so specific?
Because you need to send that powerful, unambiguous dawn is here signal to your master clock. And that morning light is what resets the clock. The healthy release of serotonin and cortisol to give you energy and focus for the day.
So yeah, that morning light, it must also suppress the melatonin as well, and then you're feeling much more bright and more alive. I've always been wondering why some people wake up with great energy and why sometimes I seem to suffer, but I think I tend to be a night owl and go to bed a lot, maybe too late and wake up too late. So I think I need to adjust that too. But I've also heard of some other fascinating research into the red light therapy too. That seems to be like a hot sort of fad and trend that people are going to. I don't think I've tried it yet, but I think it is something that's beneficial and it works at a different level. It helps to actually stimulate your mitochondria, which is your cellular powerhouse, and that will signal it to produce more of the ATP or energy, which I guess will directly combat that winter lethargy and tiredness. So I think I might also put myself in for red therapy, light therapy treatment. And the next time, if we talk about this, I'll have a bit more experience to tell you if it's true. But yeah, this has been a really, truly comprehensive discussion how we can realign our body to Earth's rhythms to step into flow. It's not just one magic bullet, but as we've shared, it's a complete unified system.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's why we call this the circadian advantage. And you just have to remember to align your three main time givers. Number one is sync your light with your light clock. Sorry. So get 10 to 30 minutes of bright light first thing in the morning. Real sun is best, but as we suggested, you can use a 10,000 lux box, which is the tool for the job in winter. Number two is sync your food clock. Eat all your calories in a consistent 8-hour window and try to do it earlier in the day. Finish eating at least 3 hours before bed. And number three, sync your seasonal clock. Acknowledge the power of the seasons and use tools like light therapy to support your body's ancient needs during the darker months.
Wow, thanks, David. Those are three great tips for aligning us to our body clock. So it's not about fighting our body with having lots more caffeine and more willpower. It's about listening to this ancient genetic clock and finally learning to live in sync with it. So to move from stress today towards thriving with Earth's powerful natural rhythms, when our body is in rhythm, flow indeed becomes reachable. And that's because our brain has been able to quieten down. We can rebalance our nervous system. Then our attention is more stable. And not only that, our creativity is more accessible. Our energy rises naturally and your actions match your biology. So we're no longer forcing performance. We're instead moving with the current instead of against it. So yeah, it's been a great talk today, David. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Amy. And it was just amazing learning about all these new tools or new science that we have, ancient tools, let's say.
Yeah, precisely. A story that we went back to the ancient time of fasting and jumped forward with the mimosa plant in a dark closet in 1729 and ending around here where we can reclaim our energy, focus, health and flow. It's been a real pleasure to have you here and find out all those insights.
So when we realign with the natural rhythms of light, rest, breath, and the living world around you, stress stops being your default setting. Your body will remember, your mind will soften, and you start moving through life with a sense of ease that feels, well, natural.
Yes. Wow. So it has been an exciting episode, but this is a more exciting part because flow isn't just about our nervous system syncing with the world around you. It's also happening deep inside you at the microscopic level. And this is something we'll be talking about in our next episode. Our bodies are a big entire universe of themselves. They're an ecosystem, and a huge part of your emotional stability, resilience, and creativity is shaped by the trillions of tiny organisms living and dancing in our guts. So please join us next week for this new episode where we'll be diving into the gut brain connection and how microbiomes and microbiota shape our mood and mind. We'll explore how our gut chemistry influences the stress response, your emotional clarity, and our intuition, and yes, even our ability to enter to the flow state. So until then, stay grounded, stay curious, and stay in rhythm. Please post any comments in the chat that anything that you found useful today, or if you have any questions for future episodes. You can follow us on Facebook at the Holistic Academy 2025. You can subscribe on Substack, where we've got some newsletters and other contents and cool bits of information and research coming out each week. You can also watch us on YouTube or listen to us in the car on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. It's been a pleasure to talk about these topics and right before we enter the winter season. So you have all the tips that you need to cope with this less time of sunlight, and but you can just adjust with the timing of your food. So until next time, follow us, and if you like it, please share it with a friend, subscribe to our channels, please give us some comments and forward the information to all the people that you think they can be benefit by this kind of exploration, let's say.
Thanks again. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Take care. Bye. See you in the next episode.